12:30, just a little bit over, is the time, and I'd really like to extend a warm welcome to you, our wonderful attendees, our panelists, for joining us from literally the length and the breadth of the planet at this hour. I acknowledge that CTIA are hosting this online event from the traditional owners of the lands we meet on today, and a warm welcome to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. The Cybertech Institute of Australia is a proud member of the Risk to Solution group of companies, Australia's most awarded integrated risk management company, dealing with medical risk, physical risk, workplace risk, education, and now encompassing both training and the consulting aspects of cybersecurity. I have to say that I'm exceptionally proud to be addressing you all today. This event was born from a place of passion to make a difference, the will for change, and a strong belief in our efforts. With the unwavering support of a dedicated team and our broader community, jumping the tech hurdles, women in IT and cybersecurity has become a reality, and no doubt will be a resounding success too. We have an extraordinary panel of speakers representing a broad spectrum of expertise, guaranteed to provide a well-rounded perspective. Before I hand over to your host for the afternoon, or the evening, or the morning, wherever you are in the world, there's a Q&A box. Please drop your comments throughout the session in the Q&A box, and we will address them accordingly. Without any further ado, I would now like to hand you over to your host for the next hour, Nicole Sofianos, who is the Chief Operations Officer for the Risk to Solution Group. Nicole has been instrumental in her expertise, in her advice, and her dedicated support in putting this event together. Thank you for facilitating, Nicole, today, and over to you.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking time out of your busy days to join us today for jumping the big tech hurdles, women in IT and cybersecurity. With the rapid changes affecting the tech and cyber industries and the huge skills gaps in these areas facing our nation, it's more important now than ever that we tackle this topic and push these kinds of conversations. As Dave said, my name is Nicole Sofianos, and I am the Chief Operating Officer for the Risk to Solution group of companies. As a risk management group, we recognize the rapidly growing need for skills growth in the technology and cyber sector, along with the importance of supporting and upskilling women in these areas. We are absolutely thrilled to be putting this forum on with some of the industry's leading technology and cyber experts, who happen to be remarkable women as well. It's really an honor to see these high-performing women standing toe-to-toe with the best in the industry here because of their expertise and accomplishments. So that we really understand their journeys and how they've reached the accomplished positions that they have, our panelists will all be invited to share a little more about their current roles and the journeys that they've taken to get there. However, I'd like to officially welcome and thank our panelists. Joining us today, we are so pleased to welcome Tamanna Monem, who is the General Manager of Government and Olympics for RedEye, Charlene Clarke, who is the Chief Vision Officer of Catalyst Central, Tiffany Guan, who is the Chief Data Scientist from attract.ai, Jacqui Loustau, who is the Founder and Executive Director for the Australian Women in Security Network, and of course, Clar Rosso, who is the CEO of ISD². Thank you and welcome again to our esteemed panelists and delegates, and a special thanks to CTIA and Risk to Solution, and especially to Dave and Janita for putting on this spectacular event. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Tamanna.
Thank you. Thank you, Cybertech Institute of Australia and Nicole for this introduction. This is a great initiative and very timely. I'm going to highlight 5 points very briefly. First, technology impacts us in all spectrums, and it is inevitable. Technology is static, it's highly dynamic, it's growing very fast. And for us, despite how much we want to avoid technology, create tech-free zone, detox, try yoga, headspace, fast 500 diet, our life is evolving around technology. We actually cannot have those without having our mobile apps ready, up and running. Second, it's huge growth. Technology contribution to Australia's economy is 122 billion, representing 6.6% of GDP. From education, agriculture, tourism, food, manufacturing, defense, you name any sector, along with products, technology plays highly critical role for us to be innovative, efficient, and agile. Despite the growth and contribution, Australian tech sector is one of the lowest in OECD country lists, and there are many factors we need to do better. But today's talk is not about that. We are here to talk about a very critical topic, women in IT and cybersecurity, and it has relevance towards that performance though. Critical drivers to sustain the tech industry growth are underpinned in getting the right skills and having diversified workforce to foster that innovation, collaboration, and achieving competitive advantage. Diversified workforce is possible when we have inclusion and diversity, have balanced participation of right talents, male, female, and all into the workforce. Now, my third point is about that participation, the mix. Based on an industry study, at present, nearly 580,000 highly skilled workforce are in tech industry in Australia. According to Deloitte's recent report, by 2026, the forecast is that the technology workforce will be 1.1 million. However, women representation is less than it is anticipated in this landscape. Tech industry's perception as having the bro culture, perhaps impacting on having these women underrepresented. Workforce balancing is not right. Women are underrepresented in many tech professionals in senior leadership positions across government, industry, academia. Now, let's look at the numbers. In America, less than 30% are represented by female in IT tech industry. In UK, in particular, the IT specialist is around 17%. Southeast Asia, it's about 32%. And in Australia, it's less than 20%. And it is even lower in senior levels. It means that either women are not promoted enough or leaving tech industry and not interested or not getting enough support as pathway to enter into the industry. Based on McKinsey report, 42% women feel burnt out while on the job, among other factors. Now, my fourth point is the ingredients, the skills in the mix. Despite having functional, technical, soft skills, when women leave the tech workforce, it will impact our future generation. In particular for our girls, they will not have enough female role models and lack female mentors. I'm not cutting men out. They support us. However, the support needs to be highly targeted towards nurturing the female talents, empowering female and also both male to work together, respect and create opportunities to showcase the talents that female bring into the workforce. As I mentioned earlier, the diversified workforce also actually enhances or impacts on overall productivity. In addition to having the technology's specific skills, to be ahead of the pack, tech companies need innovation. Honestly, many research evidence that women think differently than men. And please don't laugh. I'm not going into men are from Mars and women are from Venus, but I'm actually highlighting that point, that sensitivity, that highly emotional empathy, intelligence, creativity, the soft skills to understand the trends and strategy, and writing the codes, having that unbiased and holistic overview, which is very important in AI and all this technology that we really need to be efficient. You need that translational technical engagement skill, which actually female has. I'm not saying men doesn't, but as I said, many research actually shows that that emotional empathy, highly soft skill is actually in the intricacy of women, our ability to understand. So coming back to this, my fifth point is the future. As government is encouraging the best and brightest talents from the world via the global talent stream visa, encouraging female tech talents to join Australian workforce, we also need to grow our homegrown female talents, participate into just not STEM, I always highlight BEMS, which is business, economic, science, and maths, to be encouraged. In addition, the government, enterprise, and human resource policy, diversity, inclusion, leadership opportunities to nurture, retain female in tech industries that will actually help grow female participation into the sector. In the positive sides, being female and having all these technical and soft interpersonal skills and being highly resilient. If you are here in the as an audience and the distinguished panel members coming after me, they will be talking about their insights and they will be sharing how you can actually tap into those opportunities. And I'm looking forward to hearing from our panel for that insights. And I really would like to thank you all, Zenita, Alicia, Dave, Nicole, all the presenters and the attendees for this opportunity for me to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Tamanna. That was really fantastic. And I think you quite neatly highlighted the need for further diversity in this industry. Brilliant. Thank you very, very much. Moving on to some of our questions, and just to get our delegates a chance to get to know you all a little bit better, I'd like to ask you to tell me a little bit more about your current role and how you got to be there. I'd like to hand over to Jacqui, if you would like to answer that one, a little bit more about your current role and how you got to be there.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. My name is Jacqui Loustau and I'm the founder and the executive director for the Australian Women in Security Network. So the way that I got here was pretty much I've been in security for over 2 decades, working in various different technology and security roles, spending quite a few years over in Europe. Most recently, 8 years ago, I moved back to Australia. And after going into a conference and being the only female, I decided that I wanted to do something about that. So that's when I then started the Australian Women in Security Network. And what we are trying to do is to connect, support and inspire women in security.
Amazing, amazing, amazing work that you're doing there. Thank you so much, Jacqui. You're an absolute pioneer. Thank you. Charlene, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us a little bit more about your current role and how you got to be there.
Hi everyone. So my current role is really dynamic. I am the Managing Director of Catalyst Central, which is human resources and business advisory, kind of more consulting, but realistically it's your outsourced entire HR team, which is why I tend to use HR hands. And then I'm also I'm the Chief Vision Officer for Exodus Tech, which develops HR-based software, specifically, our Job Activator and Me Business platforms, which again are about end-to-end business solutions, and really competing within the market to support small businesses. So, for me and how I got here, it kind of doesn't make sense for me to jump from, essentially a HR background into tech. And a lot of people might not think that's possible, but growing up, I had 3 older brothers. I used to do a lot of coding. I used to do a lot of coding games, and I was a little bit of a geek as a child. So as I kind of progressed in my career and moved into human resources, I started to develop systems, with Rio Tinto and workforce planning, and really started to understand the dynamics of how data in the background, really influences how a system is created and the coding that exists in the background and what happens from a back end to a front end development. So how you take a data set into, a bunch of code into what is graphically pleasing and able to be linked in with buttons and the like. So I've oversimplified that, but that's also the beauty of being a CVO, because you're able to translate real world practicalities that a business owner can use and take that back to your development team to really articulate that in a way that you have that understanding to link in the middle. So yeah, I didn't always work in tech. I kind of stumbled across it because it's a real passion to bring something to life and get to be creative as part of that.
Amazing, amazing story. Thank you. Thanks. That's absolutely excellent. Tiffany, you are the Chief Data Scientist from attract.ai. Could you tell us a little bit more about your role and how you got to be there?
Hello, everyone. Yes, that is me. So thank you so much. Yes, Chief Data Scientist at attract.ai is my current role. And at my company, we are like a small, growing startup. And I suppose anyone in the startup space, you know, that just means, again, kind of like my panelist before, just very dynamic role. So in this role, I kind of oversee how we use data in multiple ways, kind of to inform our product development. And sorry, I should probably say what we do as a company. We help scaling companies like ourselves build hiring engines and source great talent. So again, back to the point, data from multiple perspectives, how our users use our platform, and therefore, how do we inform product decisions? We do look at profile data. So it's, you know, how do we analyze and take out insights from our database of candidates? And third, how do we look at any machine learning opportunities with what we have, whether that's increasing the speed of our search engine or, you know, things like that. So that is kind of what I do day to day. And not to mention full stack dev, so I am on the tools. How did I get there? Well, this is my first gig after co-founding my own machine learning startup, Delta AI. So I'm a fan of going after the AI named companies. And that itself was a whirlwind opportunity that I got back in 2020, going essentially 1 year out from, you know, graduating as a software engineer. My employer turned then investor, invested in myself and a few others at the time to become machine learning engineers, and then like helping us, training us and translating that experience to being co-founders. And yeah, my experience there all of 2020 was, you know, taking us to an accelerator in Los Angeles and building our, you know, VC-backed, you know, capital-backed startup from the ground up. But yeah, trials and tribulations there. So I thought after that role, feeling a bit burnt out, I wanted to go back to something that was more on the tools and tech focused. So long story short, that's how I'm at Attract. So that's me.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Tiffany. That's wonderful. Claire, I'd really like to hand over to you now and ask you the same question. As the CEO of ISC Squared, tell us a little about your current role and how you got to be there.
All right, thank you. And thank you so much for CTIA for having this and Risk to Solutions. It's great to be here. I'm from the United States, but I'm actually coming to you from the very early morning hours in London. So, Clar Rosso, I'm the CEO of ISC Squared. We're the world's largest professional association of certified cybersecurity professionals. We have over 170,000 members around the globe, best known for CISSP. So my background is a non-traditional path, absolutely, but I think Tamanna made me realize I actually share the non-technical skills are most critical in the cybersecurity profession. So my first job out of university, I was a sports reporter for a daily newspaper. And now I'm the CEO of the world's largest professional association of cybersecurity professionals. A little circuitous maybe, but I think the thread that carries over all those years, and we have research on this, of what are the non-technical skills that people need to hire for? Curiosity, critical thinking, interest in problem solving, the ability to work independently in a team, communication skills. And those are things that I have embraced throughout my career working in the professional association space. I worked for the accounting and finance profession before and really spent a lot of time focusing on who's the profession I'm serving, what are their needs, how do I advocate for them, how do I look at the risk landscape and decide where the most important place to focus is. And so then I ended up here at ISC Squared and working with the cybersecurity profession and saw things like, wow, we've been talking about workforce gap for years. That's great. What are we doing about it? Let's start talking about how we're going to shrink that gap. How diversity is an issue, inclusion is an issue, equity is an issue. Okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to talk about it? I would say one other thing that I think is a connection for me with tech. I've been in leadership roles in business for the past 20 years. And about 20 years ago, I realized we weren't going to get anything done in terms of delivering business results unless we pulled tech or IT out of the back office of our businesses and gave them a seat at the strategic table. And I think that that's really important, and that's been a strong belief, and I've been an advocate of that in the past 20 years of my career. And then, of course, now I see that same desperate need for cybersecurity within businesses. You know, pull everybody out of the back office and give us a seat at the strategic table.
I absolutely love that sentiment. In fact, it's something that we talk about so often as a company, and you've really just hit the nail on the head. Claire, I'd actually like to stay with you. We were discussing a couple of things offline, and you mentioned that you did a poll recently with your members that produced some really, really interesting results. Would you mind sharing that with our audience?
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me do that. So we, in light of the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, and there's a lot of talk and a lot of attention being paid to the cyber threat associated with that, we went out to our members and we polled them and we said, what are your top concerns? And we had members from all across the globe answer that question, including the Ukraine and Russia. And this is what they told us in terms of what their top concerns were. Number one, critical infrastructure and essential supply chains would put lives, the disruption of those and immediate threats are going to put lives at risk anywhere in the world. So that was number one. Number two was lack of preparedness, that like globally, because of things like the massive workforce gap, we are not truly prepared to combat the risk that exists. Number three concern was data loss and the ability to do business, worried about threats to business and how customers would be impacted financially. And that is really up and down and across businesses. I think we tend to see in cybersecurity that smaller businesses don't think they're as much at risk because they're not the big names. But the reality is a cyber breach could shut a small business down much faster than it is a big business. The next two are really interesting. Is the respondents are starting to look beyond the current wave of attacks to the future. They're concerned about the precedents that are being set and the fact that we need to now think of cyber warfare tactics as becoming a global norm. And again, are we prepared for that? The other thing that's going on, and I think maybe Jacqui might want to talk about this, she's going to talk about some trends as well, but the opportunism today, we're seeing this massive increase in zero-day threats, but are people using the geopolitical unrest to have other kinds of attacks going on around the world? And are we prepared and paying enough attention to attend to them? And then last but not least, and I want to thread super quick back into the tech trends that Tamanna talked about, but last but not least, there was a level setting, and this actually came from our Ukrainian respondents and our Russian Federation respondents, is their biggest concern was frankly the loss of human life due to this conflict. And that was really just kind of stops you in the tracks when you think about all of this. I think those current trends in cyber and the current things that people are worried about get amplified by the tech trends that Tamanna was talking about in terms of, you know, the pace of change and what's driving change. And those are things we should be aware of. And then as we are so focused on making sure that we have a well-skilled workforce, We also need to start looking at the balance between technology and humans. I'm starting to hear a lot of people talk about technology is going to solve every single problem we have. And technology is part of the solution, but people are part of the solution too. And I think that looking at that human technology balance is an important trend that we need to be paying attention to.
Wow, that was absolutely fantastic. What interesting data. Some really, really interesting trends there that are coming out that we've certainly noticed. Security of critical infrastructure being one of them, especially from a cybersecurity point of view. Jacqui, I'd love to get your thoughts. I'd love to hand over to you and get your thoughts on unpacking some of this incredible data. So if I can sum up here for you, Claire, we've got as a first critical first point of concern was the critical infrastructure. Second was a lack of general preparedness. The third was the threat of data loss and threats to finance and business. Fourth being cyber warfare as a norm, business as usual. 5, the opportunism, and then 6 being loss of human life as a result.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All of those things are the same thing that we see in, you know, it was a global study, obviously. So when it comes to that cyber terrorism, that's always been a lot of these things. It's funny, when we were doing traditional, like, you know, risk assessments, a lot of these things like cyber terrorism, the risk of an outbreak, all of these things were always things that were always a scenario that we would put into the risk assessment or the scenario, but a lot of the time it was like, oh, the probability of that happening, probably not going to happen. We're now moving into this new era where anything is kind of possible, which is quite scary. And that whole, you know, cyber terrorism and that loss of life, you know, when they hit hospitals, for example, that is where this interception of, you know, cybersecurity really being critical to protecting that infrastructure can be really important, and electricity and water, all those basic needs that we need as humans. I think the other element which was touched on is about that whole small business. I'm very active in that particular space, working in, you know, cybercrime, seeing, you know, certain companies being, you know, out of business just because of a cyber incident. And I think that that's something that we're all kind of seeing a lot more of now, because they don't discriminate when it comes to attacks, as we all know. The other thing that I had actually put on my list, and it was touched on slightly, but I think it's going to become a lot more prominent also, is in regards to the fact that everything is becoming digitalized. We've got Internet of Things out there. Everyone's connecting everything to, you know, the internet. It's accessible everywhere, and with that obviously comes a lot of risks. So, you know, we need to be a lot smarter when it comes to application security and building security in at the beginning. And so that's why I think we need to start thinking about what are we doing at the very, you know, start of building an app or building infrastructure or anything digital, and have we embedded security in there, because it's a lot harder to change it later on and the impacts are a lot larger. And then the last thing is obviously the human element, you know, making sure that, as we've all been talking about, you know, it's that human element, being able to communicate to people, which is really important, being able to let them know about what's happening and in a way that they can understand what they need to do in order to protect themselves. So it's just some of my inputs.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And I think it highlights the old adage that prevention is better than cure a lot of the time. So thank you for that. Charlene and Tiffany, would you like to add any comments on this topic? Charlene.
Yeah, so I think it's such an interesting dynamic, because when you start to add your business frameworks and your business processes, your human element, and how you interact with your workforce and community to really help teach and train and upskill and develop and cross-skill and keep people relevant as we do move through fast-paced change. But then also from a business continuity side of things, or, you know, a preparedness perspective, you know, I think what we've witnessed here in Australia is very much those businesses that have made it through from, you know, a cyber perspective or a cybersecurity, you know, the way in which entire industries such as manufacturing have automated, or, you know, we do look at the pandemic of the last 2.5 years. It feels like a really long time, you know, and how businesses have coped through that business continuity planning, understanding what you would do in certain circumstances and situations has really played out as being really critical and fundamental to the foundations. And what I've seen and experienced with my clients is those who had their plans in place, where we've helped them implement them and then helped them actually enact them through these different processes, has been massive. I mean, my companies alone, so like I've got an ecosystem of companies. You know, for us, we've had 2 phishing scams this year alone, where employees have come back to be like, okay, I've just received this. Is this real? Are you wanting us to go purchase this? Are you wanting us to go, you know, use the company card? This seems like a really large figure, and I won't go into the details behind it, but we were like, yes, thank you for flagging. No, it is not. Please don't give them that money. And it was basics of our information's on LinkedIn. You know, you can get our number, you can get our emails, you can get our company. You know, you can use WhatsApp for it. It's very targeted and specific, but because of the training, because of the understanding, and because we've got all the plans in place, we were able to respond to it quite quickly. You know, likewise, you know, as we've seen the pandemic and lockdowns and everything else and the significant economic impact of all of that, how you then progress and transfer digitally into a virtual world. So we can have a virtual event like this, and we're doing a panel discussion, which is no longer on a stage and an event in person. We're able to open it up to more people across multiple time zones. Clara, the fact that you're in London early hours, I'm super impressed. You know, I think that it's actually opened up greater avenues, and we can really start to see some of the positive aspects of this. I really do like that you've both touched on the bio revolution, and I think what we're really going to start to see is, you know, your data side of things and your machine learning and artificial intelligence combined with your mechanics around it and machining. But then the bio side really start to play into it, where we are really seeing automation, robotics, and, you know, the DNA side, feeling and emotion all interrelating to then create a virtual reality as well, where we can all interlink and interact. I think where the industry is heading can be very exciting, with the right security measures in place, because there's always the minority who kind of want to put the shadow over the top. And I think that's what's really exciting to me when I think about cybersecurity. I go, great, how can we protect, contain, and prepare so that we get to enjoy kind of the best parts of what this industry is really going to give us?
Can I just add to the back of that as well before we move on? Just in the theme of tech trends and yeah, everything that you brought up, Charlene, about, you know, all this data playing into it and automation and how this is becoming really exciting, but admittedly a little, it's okay to admit, like, it's a bit scary as well. Because I think, you know, there's so much data out there that, you know, I'll say even in my generation and young people, like, you know, living our lives online. And so, you know, not even considering what we put out there about ourselves, or like even now, like, you know, you could even leverage that to get further in your.
We seem to have lost Tiffany.
Machine.
Ah, there we go, back.
Oh, so sorry. Am I back? Where did I cut off?
You are back. You are back.
Typical. Sorry, I'll just keep going. And there's also someone doing their lawn work, so bear with me. Yes, so yeah, so much information that we put out about ourselves, and machine learning is already at the point where we can generate fake text, fake video, all this stuff based on everything that we already have out there. And I'm not sure how much disinformation fits in from a cybersecurity point of view, but that was actually one of the reasons we started Delta in the first place. Like, you can do this in a malicious sense, and the intention behind our company is, well, rather than creating this, and there are so many opportunities with, you know, we see that now in creative spaces, you can generate art, you can generate, you know, funny memes, things like that, but then how is that leveraged maliciously and spread around, and, you know, even to models that can we can read satire articles and they can generate that. It's so hard to tell if that's real or fake and the impact that can have down the line. So yeah, just in the terms of tech trends, I think generative AI, how that can either be leveraged either for opportunities or misuse, and then yeah, how we can, if we can control the data that we put out there and how that gets used in training that, I think that's going to be big.
Wow, I mean, you're starting to raise so many interesting conversations. I think we're going to have to schedule a couple more of these just to delve deeper into some of the questions that you've created. Thank you. That's actually fantastic. And you answered my next question as well, Tiffany, which was going to be directed to you, which was what are some of the trends that you're seeing in technology today. So that was really fantastic. It would be really nice to pivot back to women in tech. And Charlene, I'd love to ask you, what advice would you give to a woman considering a career in the tech industry? What do you wish that you had known before?
For me, what do I wish I knew before? Hindsight's an amazing thing, and I think if I had have known what I know now, I probably wouldn't have spent so many days stuck in my head being worried that I wasn't where I was meant to be, and I wouldn't have spent so many days doubting myself. I think what's been really interesting in my journey is coming from a low socioeconomic background, which I love putting it like that, but it's basically like I was really, really, really poor, and I am a female, and the combination of the two, just educationally and entering major corporates, even just trying to get to university, and even when I started my degree, human resources was a part of the arts discipline. It wasn't a part of business, so HR wasn't at the table. I then decided to progress and move into tech. Tech wasn't at the table and I'm talking about the strategic table, and I'm like, well, great, like let's just keep going up against the barriers and let's find them, because that makes life so easy. But I think from that side of things, the biggest lesson I've learned is how you convert your barriers and challenges and what solutions really look like. So, Clara, you mentioned curiosity, problem solving, and critical thinking, and I 100% agree. I think that is unfortunately lacking in a lot of applications that we see come through from a HR side of things. The minute you show those three characteristics, you will get the job, and I think that's such an amazing aspect. You don't necessarily even need the training, you don't need the direct, you don't even need to know 80% of the job. If you know 30% of the job and you're showing problem solving and critical thinking, you will get that job over and above someone who has a degree in that field, who just lacks curiosity and doesn't want to achieve more. So I think, for me, realizing and understanding that and having that inbuilt, coming from my background and having to fight so hard to get to where I got to, I had that automatically. But then I really kind of applied this aspect of when I walk into a room, and this is going to sound strange, but if I walk into a room and I don't feel welcome, I leave that room and I find a different one. Like in my mind, I go, there's 7 billion people on the planet. In WA, Western Australia alone, there's 75,000 small businesses. I can be really successful linking in with the people who are like-minded, want to achieve more, want to do more, want to give back to the community. And if I come across people who don't, that's okay. I'm not going to change them, and I don't have to, jeopardize myself in the path and journey, because by finding the people that are of the same mindset, you're going to create a movement, and the strength of that movement and empowerment that comes from supporting and linking in with other people that are on that same path is what creates change and what really creates generational change. So I really started to, that was probably the biggest lesson and learning from my entire life that I wish I had told my younger self is, know early on, if you're not welcome in that room, find a different room. If you've come up against a barrier, create a solution. And, every barrier has 3 or 4 contingencies or options attached to it. That's risk management. If you walk into something and you go, what are my risks and how do I mitigate them? You can apply that to any aspect of your life to make sure that it doesn't matter what you set out to achieve, you can achieve it. And I find that to be the same as women entering into tech, as entering into any business, as to entering into any field or career path. You know, I think it's the way in which we want to look at it and consider the challenges we're faced with.
Absolutely fantastic, Charlene. That was positively inspirational. Thank you. I'd love to open that question up to some more of our panelists. Claire, looks like you took yourself off your mic.
I did. I had to say that was amazing, Charlene. Thank you. That was wonderful. I would say for me, I think one of the, and I'm going to steal from someone else, but one of the sayings that I've always been inspired by came from the first African-American member of the U.S. Congress. Many of you may know this, Shirley Chisholm. She also ran for president of the United States. First of all, I love her because she ran for president of the United States, because that was my second goal aspiration in life. My first, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. Neither of those have worked out so far. And I want to dunk a basketball. That one's not working either. But there are always backup plans, right? But what I loved about what she said if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And it's a little bit like that, go to a different room, but it's almost a little digging in and saying, you know what? No, I'm here. I want to be part of this solution. I'm going to help you with the solution. And I'm going to just come and sit down at the table and we're going to have a chat. And you can do that. I think one other thing I would do, and I see this a lot with women, where women give great advice to others and don't accept that advice for themselves. So if I have learned anything, is to challenge myself and say, I might be thinking this. If I were someone else, what advice would I be giving myself? And I often find out that it's not the same. And so that's one of my suggestions.
Absolutely brilliant. And these are such great practical tips and hints for all our listeners, all our audience. Tiffany, I'd love to hear from your perspective, because you're coming in from a slightly different, more real technology heavy focus. It would be great to give your tips and hints. Same question. What do you wish you had known, and what advice can you give to all our listeners?
Well, can I just echo what my fellow panelists have said? There's a lot of good lessons in that. I think what I would probably tell myself is, you can do something just because you want to. Like, you can go for an opportunity not because you think like you don't have to justify like, okay, I need this much experience or I need to go for it. You can do it. And if you want to do it, that's sometimes all you need. I would say, even though I've had some literally career-changing and life-changing opportunities recently, and like that have, started my career off well, like it feels almost embarrassing to admit, like at no point have I ever felt comfortable taking these risks or these opportunities. It's like I'm terrified, but in a way I've been like forced to do it. And I can almost trace this back to when I was at uni, or because I only picked up IT. And I will admit, T out of the STEM acronym actually used to be my least favorite. So when I did start it in uni, I never felt like I belonged. And I was like, oh, all these guys, like, they already know more than I do. And if I'm not the one answering questions, at least I can, if I don't say it, maybe I could just compensate by learning more, doing more in the background so that no one can question how good I am. But then I just never necessarily would like speak up for myself and be confident in that aspect. And I think that is literally only something I'm learning to embrace now, and realizing, hey, these guys, they might know less than I do, but they're just going for it. Hey, why don't I just put on that hat? And that's where I am now. And I do wish that I'd started doing that earlier in my career. So that's what I'd say.
Amazing, Tiffany, absolutely amazing. It's from my perspective, it's absolutely inspirational hearing from all of you and hearing all the obstacles that you've overcome and how you've just shown the grit that you've shown to get through. Absolutely inspirational. Tamanna, I'd actually like to hand over to you for a bit. Now, you mentioned diversity. You spoke a lot about diversity and the huge disparity between genders in tech. I think you said under 20% of tech representation is women. I'd love to hear your comments on this.
So thank you so much, Nicole. And as I said, I was like totally fascinated by hearing all of the panel members, and I could not stop myself saying, I really want to do just a little bit of a hint, like 2 pieces of tips. But Nicole, coming back to your question, I actually did ask our team like at RedEye, we actually have 35% female representation and 50% in senior leadership. So I'm one of them, but it's kind of like, I'm not talking about RedEye now, but coming back to the point is like, I'm like Clar, like someone who has non-technical experience, but like non-technical experience, but I'm into that BEMS, like business, economics, maths, and science, like having science till year 12, and then business, all these, like international business sort of understanding. 2 things I always highlight is learning ability. So I never stopped learning. And what I do is actually learning from best practices, learning from anyone. I really absolutely don't care. I think please don't care like whether it's a male, female, but learning from the skilled, like we always say like women of substance, but I think it's actually for everyone, men and women of such substance. So learning from them. The other thing is, if I may say, stop asking for validation. This is what we do. Women, we always do. And do you know what? One of my best teachers are actually my male colleagues. I have seen like so many times you'll see like when we do a presentation, we write something, we say, "What? How was that? Did we do right? Did I do it right?" Have you ever had our male colleagues asking us this? Is like, was it okay? But we do. So I think some of the traits from our male colleagues, like I'm not saying that we have to be like a lot of boyish. We still have, we need to have that like softness, but don't ask for validation. That's my views. Thank you.
That's incredible advice. Thank you, Tamanna. That's really fantastic. Just sticking in the same theme. Someone in our audience has asked us, if you've got 0 experience in technology, what would be the very first step you would recommend taking, apart from signing up to CTIA, of course? Tiffany, I'd like to actually hand this one over to you, if you don't mind.
Sure. That is a good question. I actually had one of my friends come up to me the other day and ask me this. She's an accountant, for example, and she's like, well, if I wanted to start coding, like, how would I even start? Like, I could feel, for example, like, I don't want my job to be done in 20 years. Like, where do I even begin? It's interesting. I think if you're at the stage where you want to get your hands on tech and like, how do I start building something? I would say there are a lot of resources out there, like learning how to code and like the basics there, but maybe more powerful than that, than getting your hands on the tools. I would say try and find someone who's in the industry and just sit down and have a conversation with them. There are a lot of meetups where, you know, people of all experiences and backgrounds, like they just go. I mean, hopefully, at least in Brisbane, they're starting back up. So that's nice to meet in person and be able to have that one-on-one conversation. But you can learn a lot through just people's experience. So I think there'd be 2 ways to go about it that I would recommend. Yeah.
Thanks, Tiffany, for that. Jacqui, if I could ask you this question, how can parents help their kids identify what is malicious or untrue as opposed to being real? So hard for us to identify how we can help our kids.
It's a very good question. And first of all, it's good that, parents are, they're paying attention and are a resource for kids to actually come and speak to them about that. So that's great that they've come to you. So when it comes to teaching your kids about what is, something that's malicious and something that is not, a lot of that is learning yourself, I guess, and then teaching them about what to actually look out for. So when it comes to, for example, you know, my own kids, you know, I'm sitting there with them, and when they want to actually have a look at, okay, can I go to that particular website? You know, there's certain things that I tell them about what they need to actually be looking at in terms of, you know, the type of website. Is it a well-known one? Is there anything unusual about what is in that particular, you know, URL, for example? And, you know, just going through that with them is probably the best thing, I'd say. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacqui. Charlene, I've got one for you here. How would you get into leadership in the STEM field? Would this be through technical ability or the ability to work with others, or something else?
Oh, that's a really interesting dynamic question, because I think the truth is, when you promote from within technically amazing people, you put them in a technically specific role and they thrive in it and they do an incredible job, and you go, do you know what, let's promote this person because they're clearly going to be amazing at running a team. And then you forget that little bit of leadership training and they start to manage a team and suddenly they're not doing so well. And you get this really amazing, high performing platinum staff member, and suddenly they require improvement and their career's plummeting and they're left sitting in your office going, why am I not doing well suddenly? I was, you know, go back 18 months ago and I was thriving in my career and now I'm doing terrible. You know, and vice versa, someone who has amazing people skills and, you know, they have all the right charisma to talk to people and bring teams together and create that amazing culture, but then someone asks a technical question and suddenly they start to lose respect within their team because they actually can't answer a technical question. So it's like, okay, you're great at the social side of things and you're great at, you know, creating empathy and compassion and validating your staff's emotions and where they're at, but without that technical ability, you don't broker the same level of respect. And I think what's often missed at that leadership side of things is the breadth of understanding you need. I think these days there's quite a, you know, singular focus of I need to go up the chain and I need to go up the chain as quickly as I can because that's what shows that I'm so good at what I do. And I think the reality is it's about breadth of knowledge and, you know, as you move into the leadership space, really understanding what makes people tick and how they come together and how to empower others. I think this is such a critical element, ties into women in tech as well, is what does it really take to empower other people, lift them up, encourage them in their space. And, you know, it goes back to the advice side of things as well. If you're offering and providing advice that has that edge that might leave a little bit of doubt behind in someone's mind, you've not empowered them at all in that conversation. You've actually left them with more questions. So always considering how you're impacting people as you go into that. And it kind of links into a question that I'm seeing pop up in the Q&A that I'm going to tie into this a little bit, which is someone's actually posted about medical health background and how do you kind of link into IT. So taking on that leadership element and that technical side of things, just flagging, I've got 2 people in my team, one who, or I should really say 3 people. One has a HR background that's moved into tech. One is a hairdresser who's moved into tech. And the other one is a health nurse who's moved in as my operations manager. And she's a gun. She covers off everything from HR, payroll, accounts receivable and payable to system configuration and deployment. You know, it really goes back to those core critical skills, problem solving and critical thinking. If you have that coupled with a desire to learn, you get your base core skill set in an area that you're passionate about, and then you apply that in and around with all of your other skills, which I don't particularly like soft skills. It's really about your people etiquette and your people ability. You know, I think anyone can change industry and cross skill along the way.
Great, thanks, Charlene. That's absolutely fantastic advice. We are just running out of time now, but there is one more question that I'd like to just have a quick roundtable comment from each of you. Jacqui, I'd like to start off with you. How can we get more women into cyber and technology?
Oh yeah, I could do a whole talk on this one. So I'll try to keep it to 3 quick points. We need to start it early and really raise that awareness about tech careers, and also to, you know, show those role models that are out there doing it. The second one is, you know, change the way it's perceived. It's not just about techies in a back room, you know, hacking people. And the last thing is support, you know, making sure that we're really supporting that next generation.
Brilliant. I'd love to hear from you, Claire.
Thank you. So I would say first we need to remove the diversity barriers that are keeping people from entering in the first place. And many times that's education and experience. If you don't have the same education and experience that someone else did, you aren't going to be hired, or you're not going to tend to go down that path. So we need to look where people are and go to where they are and encourage them, as Jacqui said, into these careers. And I think the earlier we do it, the better. At ISC Squared, one of the things we've done this year is we are launching an entry-level cybersecurity certification that is the foundation, and we know this from employers all across the globe, of this is what I need people to understand so they can move into a cybersecurity career. And we think that that's going to give people a step up on that ladder to be able to start their careers. Those are two of the biggest things. Well, I'll throw one other little tiny thing in that I think is important. When we look at cybersecurity, and I think tech, it could be is the same. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. In cybersecurity, lots of jobs are fractional. So it's a really good sandbox to try things out and test it and see. So provide those opportunities for people to try things, invite them to meetings, invite them to be a part of a project team to learn and see if maybe they have the interest and aptitude for a career in tech or cyber.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Claire. Charlene, what would you say we can do to encourage more women in technology and cyber?
So I agree with everything that's been said so far, and I think that's really good from a generational side of things. I'm gonna then instead put my business hat on and really kind of go, it's not about the policies and frameworks that are implemented within corporations. And I think, you know, whether you're small, medium or large, whether you're global, national, state-based, every corporation has their own part to play in creating the opportunities and opening the door. So yes, I understand the notion of, you know, having metrics and targets and the number of women, but even if you fill those roles, if you don't have the right policies and frameworks in the background that actually creates the kind of work environment that allows the space for women to have the flexibility within the workplace to be able to work in those fields, and the kind of cultural environment that is welcoming and to diversity and inclusion, then I think that we would have the issue of retention. So I'm going to flag the policies and frameworks within corporations and what can be done in that space. And it's the basics of policy language changes, removing, you know, unconscious bias, creating open communication, you know, focusing more on health and well-being, which, by the way, most men are very appreciative of. The fact that we're moving into a space where surrogacy is available to men, and, you know, you've got parental leave policies that are actually available to men, you know, you will find that actually everyone's becoming grateful for the movement that's happening. Yeah, definitely around the frameworks that exist once someone starts to make it more attractive.
Fantastic. And then last but certainly not least, Tiffany, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the matter.
Thank you. Oh, it's going to be hard to match everyone because you've really articulated what I've some of the points I've been thinking. Even to your last point, Charlene, that, you know, what can we do within our corporations and organizations? I really think it's on the leaders of today to give those opportunities to women who already are there in their roles, open the door there, and then I think that will have a follow-on effect, because, you know, part of it is like, you can't be what you can't see. And for me, it's like having the role models. If we can instill that and give first opportunities now, I know, like, we've experienced it, we're gonna, you know, take that downstream to the girls and the women who are starting to enter that, and to help make it an inclusive space for us all to get ahead. And also functionally, I would say there's an advantage in tech that, this is the place if you want to build generational wealth. Like it is great to be in a relatively young industry where a lot of the, lifestyle, autonomy, flexibility, creativity, problem solving, all this stuff is available for you, and you can make change here, and it's in demand right now. And I think it's maybe important to bring some of those aspects to the table as well, to encourage women to get into the industry. So that's me.
Absolutely brilliantly put. Thank you, Tiffany. And thank you to everyone. Jacqui, thank you so much. Claire, Charlene, and of course, Tamanna, thank you so much. This has been an eye-opening panel, and I'm very honored to be in the presence of all of you. Thank you so much. And with that, it's a wrap from me. I'm going to hand over to Dave. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Wow, wow, wow. I wish we could write off the rest of the day. There's so much just to unpack here. Look, I had high expectations for today, but I have to tell you, this exceeded absolutely every single one of them. So just a very special thank you, Charlene, Claire, Jacqui, Nicole, Tamanna, and Tiffany. Outstanding. I'm speechless, and that's a very rarity. I've always got something to say. Before I wrap up and finalize everything, we've got one more trick up our sleeve for you today, and that's for all our attendees, for one of our attendees that have joined us today, and that the Institute of Resilience has kindly offered a scholarship position for their leadership and high performance program. It's an incredible, Charlene, touching on what you said earlier about, it's very important to have the skills, and it's very important that we possess these skills, but we want to now take it one step further. And for one lucky attendee here today, we are offering you, thanks to the Institute of Resilience, a scholarship. So how we're going to select this person is I'm going to run around the room to each one of our panelists and ask you for a number between 0 and 250. So I'm going to go in the order as you appear on my screen. Nicole, would you give me a number between 0 and 250?
75.
75. Tiffany. Jacqui, you're next.
Myself, okay, 186.
186. Jacqui.
15.
15. Claire.
43.
43. Tamanna. You're on mute there, Tamanna.
I said I was going to say 43, Claire read my mind. So I'll give you.
No, you're allowed 43. You can take 43. We're going to take the medium number.
I'll do
43 is your number? 16. Perfect. Wonderful. And Charlene, what is your number?
Let's go 31.
31. Right. So I'm going to put that into my little system, which will give me a medium. And in a minute, I will work out exactly who the winner of that lucky prize is. There's one unsung hero here who has put this entire event together, who's coordinated everything, who's ensured that our guests are well looked after, who's taken care of all the technical aspects, who's taken care of all of the marketing, who's just really ensured that today has gone without a hitch, and that's Janita. Janita Zhang, I often tell you that I don't tell you enough how much I appreciate you and what you do. It's just really incredible, and you can be so proud of everything that you put together for today. So a massive round of applause to you. Thank you. But all of our insights today are available on our social media platforms. So we're going to be taking tidbits from today and continuously sharing them so that we don't lose the momentum and we don't lose the valuable information that we've received today. So for all of you, follow us on our socials, on our Facebook page, on our LinkedIn profile, on our Instagram, subscribe to our newsletters. Our newsletters have been absolutely instrumental in conveying all the developments that have been happening. So if you give me 30 seconds, I'm going to quickly work out who our winner is. We can announce it, and you can have a look at our socials and take down our socials details in the meantime. So if you bear with me for 1 second, we're going to just jot that in. intended worthy recipient. And the intended worthy recipient is number 61. And that corresponds to, let's see who that is. Attendee number 61 is Tracy O'Flanagan. Tracy, we've got your details. We'll be in touch with you. And I can tell you from personal experience, this is a life-changing program. And for those of you that unfortunately weren't able to win the scholarship today, please head over to the Institute of Brazilians, have a look at the program. It is now recognized along multiple platforms. So please do yourself a favor. And in signing off, again, a massive thank you to our attendees, a massive thank you to our panel. Wonderful event. And the only problem with today is, ladies, you have now booked your place in our follow-up webinar. So thank you for that. Wonderful. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Until we meet again, take care.